Hey everyone, welcome back for another News Roundup Deep Dive. Today we've got a pretty diverse set of stories for you, spanning all kinds of fields. Tech space, even some gaming news. We even have like this wild cryptocurrency crime. So yeah, lots to cover.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's just dive right in. Okay, first up, Apple. So Bloomberg's Mark Gurman and 9 to 5 Mac, they're reporting that the MacBook Pro is going to get a total redesign. But there's a catch. We have to wait until 2026 for it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so what's interesting here is that this deviates from Apple's typical 4-year design cycle.
Right.
So it looks like the 2025 refresh is mainly going to be just a chip upgrade
Yeah.
to the M5 series, and then they're going to save like the dramatic makeover for the following year.
Interesting.
And the other big news here is that Apple is expected to incorporate OLED displays into the new MacBook Pros, similar to what they've done with like the recent iPad Pros. And they're also aiming for a thinner design, which is kind of a shift from, the slightly thicker build they went with during the initial transition to Apple Silicon.
So potentially like even better performance?
Oh yeah, for sure. Can't overlook the M6 chip either.
Right.
Rumored to be built on the 2-nanometer process.
Which means?
Yeah, potential performance boost. On top of all the, the new display and the new design. So if you're thinking about upgrading your MacBook Pro, you might want to hold off for a couple of years. See what happens.
Yeah, see what they come up with.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. Talk about something much larger. The universe itself.
Okay.
So there's a study that was recently published in the Journal of Cosmology and Astroparticle Physics. And it's presenting this really fascinating theory that black holes might actually be the force behind the universe's expansion.
Interesting.
Pretty mind-blowing, right? So you probably know this. Dark energy makes up like 70% of the universe.
Yeah.
But it's still a complete mystery to scientists. And so this new research is proposing a connection between dark energy and black holes.
Oh, okay. How so?
So the researchers use something called the Dark Energy Spectroscopic Instrument.
What is
It's called DSI for short. And they used it to track the expansion of the universe and compare that data with the growth of black holes over time. And what they found was that as new black holes formed, the amount of dark energy in the universe also increased.
So almost as if the black holes were feeding the universe's expansion as they grow.
Yeah, exactly. And this theory could also offer an explanation for the Hubble tension, which is that discrepancy in measurements of the universe's expansion rate. That has puzzled cosmologists for years.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
So it's a pretty compelling theory, but obviously more research is needed to confirm this link between black holes and dark energy.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like a captivating avenue for future exploration.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's get from the mysteries of the cosmos. Something a little bit more down to earth. Cybercrime.
Okay.
So Interpol just completed a major operation called Operation Synergy II, and it led to 41 arrests and the takedown of thousands of malicious servers.
Wow.
Yeah, this operation spanned 95 countries, which really shows you the global nature of cybercrime. It also involved collaboration with like all these leading cybersecurity companies. Group IB Kaspersky, Trend, Microteam Simru, which shows that you really need to have like a collective effort now to combat these threats.
Yeah, takes a village.
So Operation Synergy II targeted all kinds of cybercrime, like ransomware phishing scams, info stealers, those ones that are designed to like swipe your personal data.
Right.
And the operation yielded some pretty impressive results. Over 1,037 malicious servers taken down in Hong Kong alone. In Macau, 291 servers were taken offline. And even Mongolia saw some action. They conducted house searches there, and they identified 93 individuals linked to like illegal cyber activities.
So this shows
Yeah.
that cybercrime is becoming increasingly sophisticated.
For sure.
You've got like AI-enhanced phishing attacks,
Yeah.
targeted and destructive ransomware, info stealers that can really pave the way for like even more damaging breaches.
It's crazy. It's like a constant battle to stay ahead of all these digital threats. Okay, now for something completely different. Let's talk about gaming, specifically the future of Nintendo. They've got some really interesting plans for their next console generation.
Okay, tell me more.
So, Nintendo recently made this big announcement that has the gaming community buzzing. Their next generation console, which hasn't even been officially revealed yet, is going to be backwards compatible with existing Switch games.
Interesting.
Yeah, so this is huge.
It is.
This could really be a shift in Nintendo's strategy. because typically they haven't really offered backwards compatibility with new consoles. They kind of make you rebuild your game library
Ah,
every time they come out with a new console.
right.
But this time it seems like they're aiming for a smoother transition for consumers.
Yeah, which is a win for everyone.
Oh yeah, gamers get to keep enjoying the games they already own. And Nintendo gets to capitalize on this incredible library that they built with the Switch. I mean, they sold over 1.3 billion Switch games. That's a record for any Nintendo platform. So think about all those phenomenal games. Breath of the Wild, Animal Crossing, Smash Bros. Imagine being able to jump right into those games on the new console from day one.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And it also means that games that are currently being developed for the Switch, like the new Metroid Prime 4, the new Pokemon game, they could have a much longer lifespan.
Yeah,
They could even potentially carry over to the new console.
makes sense.
Yeah, so this is like a potentially groundbreaking move. That could really reshape the gaming landscape.
Interesting.
Okay, now for a story that's a little less fun and a lot more shocking.
Okay.
So, this is a grim reminder that as cryptocurrency gains prominence,
Right.
it's going to attract not just investors, but also those who are seeking to exploit it for criminal gain.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So this story is wild. Dean Skirka, the CEO of a Canadian crypto firm called WonderFi, was kidnapped in broad daylight in Toronto.
Wow.
Yeah. And the perpetrators demanded a $1 million ransom for his release.
That's insane.
Yeah, and what makes this crime even crazier is that it happened during rush hour
Yeah.
in a really bustling part of the city. So it really shows you the audacity of these criminals.
Yeah.
And according to CBC, this was the 171st incident of physical violence used to steal cryptocurrency.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot more than I would have thought.
Yeah, so it really underscores the growing risks associated with this emerging market.
Right.
So a little bit of context. WonderFi is a pretty prominent player in the crypto space. They're backed by Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. They've been enjoying significant financial success. Their third quarter earnings report, which was released just a day before the kidnapping, showed 41 million Canadian dollars in revenue over the past 9 months.
Wow.
And on top of that, Bitcoin itself has been surging in value,
Right.
recently hitting a new record high of over $76,000.
It's easy to see why someone would target them then.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
given the vast sums of money involved.
Yeah.
So this incident really raises questions about security in the cryptocurrency world. As the value of cryptocurrency keeps going up, we need to be aware of these risks and start taking steps to mitigate them.
For sure.
Okay, now, for our last story today, we're going to turn our attention to a more somber situation unfolding in Afghanistan.
Okay.
So, this is a really disheartening development
Right.
that further restricts the rights of Afghan women,
Hmm.
who are already facing so many limitations under the Taliban's rule.
Yeah, I've been following that.
So, the Taliban has imposed this new restriction that prohibits women from praying loudly or reciting the Quran.
In front of other women. Yeah.
So women are already banned from education after the 6th grade. They're excluded from public spaces, barred from most jobs, and now they can't even pray or recite the Quran in the presence of other women. It's really hard to comprehend such a restriction. Vice and Virtue Minister Khalid Hanafi made this chilling statement. He said, "It is prohibited for a grown woman to recite Quranic verses or perform recitations in front of another grown woman. Even chants of takbir, Allahu Akbar, are not permitted." So it's just a stark reminder of the Taliban's efforts to control women's lives and erase them from public life.
Yeah, it's very sad.
And this isn't just like words either. The ministry is launching a nationwide awareness program to promote these laws. So it shows your intent to enforce them.
Yeah.
So this is a truly tragic situation, and I think it's really crucial for us to raise awareness about what's happening and support efforts to protect the fundamental human rights of these women.
I agree.
Okay, let's just take a moment to reflect on all the stories we've covered today.
Yeah, we've explored such a range of topics from, the exciting potential of new technologies to the vast mysteries of the universe, from the really harsh realities of cybercrime to these ongoing struggles for human rights in such a complex world.
Yeah, and it really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It highlights how interconnected everything really is and how events in one area can have ripple effects across the globe.
Yeah, like that story about the kidnapped crypto CEO. It's not just like a crime story. It really reflects this changing economic landscape and the risks that come with new and emerging technologies.
For sure. It raises all sorts of questions about security, regulation, the ethical implications of these advancements.
And then there's a Nintendo story. On the surface, it's about video games. But it also speaks to like the evolving nature of the gaming industry
Yeah.
and how these companies are adapting to changing consumer expectations and technological possibilities.
And you never know what innovations might come next in gaming and in other fields.
Yeah, it's both exciting and a little bit daunting.
Definitely. The future holds so much potential, but also significant challenges. It's up to us to navigate this uncharted territory with, wisdom, foresight, and a commitment to creating a better world for everyone.
Okay, before we wrap things up, I want to pose a few thought-provoking questions to you, our listener. These are things we didn't really have time to fully explore today, but they're definitely worth thinking about.
Okay, I like a good brain teaser.
So, with technology evolving so rapidly, how do you think it will shape our lives in the coming years? For better or for worse? Think about those upcoming MacBook Pros. With their sleek new designs and super powerful chips, or consider that mind-blowing theory that black holes are driving the expansion of the universe.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
And in a world that's increasingly reliant on digital systems, how can we stay ahead of those cyber criminals? Remember that massive Interpol operation? That shows that these threats are real, and they're constantly evolving.
We have to stay vigilant.
Okay, now let's talk about gaming again. Do you think backward compatibility is the future of gaming? Or will new consoles always require us to start fresh? Nintendo's decision to make their next console backwards compatible. With Switch games, it's a pretty big deal. And finally, let's not forget about those bigger questions raised by the news today. What does the rise of cryptocurrency and the violence associated with it say about our changing world? That story about the kidnapped crypto CEO, it was pretty eye-opening.
It was.
And how can we raise awareness and support for the rights of women in Afghanistan and around the world? That story about the Taliban's restrictions was incredibly disheartening.
Yeah, it's something we need to keep talking about.
Okay. Those are just a few things to ponder. As you go about your day, we encourage you to stay curious, stay informed, and engage in meaningful conversations about the issues that matter most.
The world is full of complexities and contradictions, but it's also full of possibilities. By embracing knowledge, critical thinking, and empathy, we can navigate these challenges and shape a brighter future for ourselves and for future generations.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.
It's wild, isn't it? Just how much is happening all the time.
I know, right? The news cycle never really stops.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that. It keeps things interesting.
Keeps us on our toes, for sure.
So, out of all the stories we've covered so far, what stood out to you the most?
That's a good question. You know, I think it was that juxtaposition between the really exciting stuff, like the new MacBook Pro, and that research about black holes and the universe expanding. All that's like awe-inspiring, makes you think about all the possibilities.
Right. But then we have these other stories
Mm.
that are kind of a bummer, like the cybercrime and the stuff happening in Afghanistan.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that things aren't always moving forward.
Yeah, progress isn't always a straight line.
Exactly.
So, before we move on, I wanted to talk about the Nintendo story a bit more, that whole backward compatibility thing. I think it could really change the gaming industry.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's a big deal for consumers.
Yeah.
Because, now they can upgrade and still play all their old games.
Exactly. So they might be more likely to upgrade sooner,
Right.
which could lead to faster adoption rates.
Makes sense.
And what about for game developers? Do you think knowing their games might have a longer lifespan now will change how they design games?
That's interesting. Maybe. Maybe they'll focus more on making games that people can play for years.
Yeah.
Instead of just being tied to one console.
So we might see more like expansive worlds and richer storylines.
Could be. It'll be really interesting to see how it all plays out.
For sure. Okay, now I want to leave our listeners with some final thoughts, some questions to think about.
Hit me with them.
Okay, so thinking about that Apple story, what do you think the future of personal computing looks like? I mean, technology is changing so fast. How are our devices going to adapt? And how will that affect the way we work and create and connect with each other?
That's a big question. I mean, we're already seeing a shift toward more portable devices, foldable screens, augmented reality. Who knows what's next?
It's pretty exciting. Okay, now that cybercrime story, it was a good reminder that technology can also create new problems.
Yeah.
So how do we stay ahead of the bad guys in this digital world?
Right. It's not just about protecting our own data. We need to demand better security from companies, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, and that cryptocurrency story, I think it brings up this bigger question. What roles should cryptocurrency play in our global financial system?
That's a tough one. There's a lot to consider there, like the benefits and the risks.
Right. And finally, that story about Afghanistan. How can we better support human rights and gender equality, especially in places where those freedoms are under threat?
That's something we all need to think about and work towards.
Okay, those are some heavy things to think about, but they're important.
They are.
So much to think about.
I know, right?
It's amazing how a few news stories can really spark these bigger conversations.
It really is.
Like you realize everything's connected.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
all these stories bring up these bigger questions.
Yeah, about the future, about technology, about like what it means to be human.
Right. And even if we don't have all the answers, just thinking about these questions makes us more informed and more engaged.
I totally agree.
So to our listeners out there, we hope you feel inspired to keep exploring these topics too,
Yeah, keep digging, keep learning.
because this deep dive is really just the beginning.
It is. It's up to each of you to take these ideas and apply them to your own lives.
So on that note, I think we'll wrap things up for today.
Sound good?
It's been great exploring these stories with you.
Always a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us.
Look you.
We'll catch you next time for another deep dive into the fascinating world of news and ideas